Today saw the sort of closing day for the AI summit in Paris. The UK and America did not sign any of the safety regulations that the rest of the EU and other countries did. They were saying there needs to be security and safety and proper policy around AI. JD Vance, who was there, he did not agree. He said that what the EU was doing was stifling the industry of AI. Britain didn't sign that agreement. There's a lot to talk about with AI, and as usual, we have to get our AI expert and futurist Mal Fletcher, he's also a social commentator, to join us about what's been happening. Mal, it's really good to see you again. What do you make of this summit and how it ended today?
Hi, Petrie. It's good to be here again. Look, I think the aims of the summit were quite good. There was a whole list of them, but two main ones were to harmonise the approach of governments generally to regulating AI with the sort of ultimate goal, perhaps, of having a global governance system for AI. And secondly, to focus on sustainability, addressing the huge need for energy that will come about as AI goes forward. And they're all laudable goals, but governments, and I think perhaps especially European governments, might not be necessarily well placed to understand, first of all, advanced tech, and they're not likely, on past record, to be bold or agile enough to take action on some very important AI-related issues. Granted, America takes a more laissez-faire approach to all this. It leaves it up to market forces. That's fairly typical for the American situation. I'm disappointed that we're not engaging more closely in the safety areas that are needed. I'd like to see our Prime Minister and others do more in that regard. Instead of just talking about innovation-friendly AI, we know from our experience with nuclear development and genetic engineering, for two examples, that powerful techs do need to be reined in at times.
It was interesting to watch and to listen to JD Vance, of course the Vice President of the United States of America, when he was talking today. I mean, I felt a palpable, almost antagonism towards him. I don't know if you felt the same thing, but that sort of very typical American, we're going to be the best. You lot are not going to be number one, we're going to be number one, and you're going to follow our example, and anybody who doesn't follow our example is basically missing out, and this is never going to have any impact on jobs. This is going to help jobs. And I saw a lot, Emmanuel Macron. I mean, there were a few people who looked annoyed, actually.
Yeah, and probably have good reason to be, especially as he was speaking in their city. I think, though, he's simply representing the desire of President Trump and the MAGA people who do believe that the market forces are the most important thing with things like innovation. I think they have a right to say they're number one because they are, in terms of big tech development, and at the moment anyway, in terms of AI, they are the biggest and the best. But that, of course, comes with an extra responsibility. And so they need to do more. For example, one of the issues that could have been addressed more in this whole thing was the explosion of the surveillance economy, the use of private data in very public ways. And, AI feeds on data. We know that. It's a very hungry animal. Already the global data economy is worth more than $3 trillion, $3 trillion with a T. And the more powerful and ubiquitous AI becomes, the more data it needs to feed it. Often data that we haven't given our consent to having been used. And so the hungrier it gets, the more of our human experience will be brought under the digital umbrella by big tech, the more of our lives will take on a digital component of some kind. And that'll become much more of an issue as we race towards what's called artificial general intelligence, which they did talk about today, especially as we blur the line between humanity and tech using things like AI implants and nanobots. So we need to remember always that tech is a good servant and could be a very poor master. I don't favour the American laissez-faire approach, but I think the Europeans are going to have to really, to use an old term, man up and be very strong and bold in taking on the power of big tech and the reach of big tech.
But you can't have both, Right, you can't have in the United States sort of unfettered, unwatched growth in AI, and have Europe and other countries, maintaining some oversight on AI. Those two just would not work. So, how are they? Is there a middle ground to be found that protects us from the growth of AI?
Yes, I think there is, and I don't think innovation and regulation are necessarily opposed to one another, and that's what sort of came through with J.D. Vance today. I don't believe that. I think that the two can work together. I think there'll be a middle ground. I think America will posture itself and set itself up as the big bold cowboys of the Wild West, and Europe will be left to sort of say, well, hang on a minute, this is affecting our economies and the safety of our people, so please think again. I think the fact we have Elon Musk, who I think is doing some good work in some areas, overseeing the US Department of Government Efficiency, tells us how far technology, big tech, has come in the past decade. To have someone like that as close to the US president shows you how far technology itself has moved forward in terms of power and influence. So yes, we do need regulation. It needs to be based on ethics, and the debate that isn't being had in these summits is about setting up guidelines for the ethical behaviour of AI and the companies that build it. Questions about, how do we deal with complex situations where there's no clear right and wrong. That's the purpose of ethics, to answer those questions. We're not doing that when it comes to AI. We're still trapped in this constant cycle of talking about the technical ability of AI and not what it necessarily means to our humanity. And I'm convinced, Petrie, that the biggest question for our generation, in a sense, is not what the tech can do, but what does it mean to be human in the face of the tech? And then work from there to establish our ethics and then our regulations. I think we're getting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Is America being willfully naive, or do they genuinely believe that AI will not have an impact on jobs? That it will help people do their jobs properly, like you wouldn't have to lift a box anymore, you can get a robot to do that for you, so it wouldn't but then I wonder why the human being is needed if the robot can then put it itself directly on the shelf.
Yes, I think, I don't know whether it just sounds more bellicose than they actually are, but it's fairly clear. There are enough studies now globally, including in the United States, that suggest that a high percentage of jobs will be automated in the next 10 to 15 years, largely because of AI. And as I say, that's true in America as much as it is in Europe. So there will be rapid change. I think they're right to suggest that new forms of jobs will be created because of technology. That's been the case throughout history. But the challenge for us is, can we adapt quickly enough to make use of those new jobs before the AI takes those over as well? And the other thing to remember in the American scene and here is that digital tech talks a lot about innovation, but it's actually sometimes hindering innovation because it's the home to several near monopolies. And that's been true since the development of the personal computer, when Microsoft and Apple were jealously guarding their territory and buying out smaller potential competitors before they could develop their ideas. And monopolies don't necessarily foster innovation. They often suffocate it by buying up patents for ideas they have no intention of developing. And that, of course, closes opportunities for smaller, more agile companies to be creative.
But surely there should be oversight on the monopolisation of, as you were saying just there, if there are a couple of people, like in this country, in America, the monopolisation of the media, it's already great percentages of media in the hands of a few people. That would, I presume, be the same risk for AI, that if you have, a couple of billionaires who control all the AI, what are they going to do with it, as opposed to making sure that it is open and spread evenly?
Yes, indeed. And that's why there's so much interest in the story today about Elon Musk wanting to buy OpenAI. He was at one point a major investor and one of the leaders in the pioneer phase of OpenAI, now wants to buy it out completely. And people are just concerned that it's too much power. You've got X, Twitter. If you have OpenAI, you've got both the data and the means to, in a very sophisticated way, analyze that data. That would help him with SpaceX and Tesla, but it doesn't necessarily help smaller companies to get a foothold. And the other thing about big tech in general is that it's answerable mainly to its shareholders. Its bottom line is profit and market share. It's not answerable necessarily, first off, to democratically elected governments unless it is forced by law to be answerable. So if European or other governments are serious about providing these regulatory checks on AI and promoting innovation, they will need to be bold enough to take on big tech. The present US government doesn't really plan to do that. But as I said, we found the hard way sometimes that powerful techs do need to be reined in.
That spat between Sam Altman of OpenAI and Elon Musk, there's no love lost there between them. I mean, Sam, he was offered nearly 100 billion, although the market value is about 160 billion. So he was offered 100 billion by Musk to buy this, and he said it's not for sale. We're not selling it. I'm not interested at all. Which led, and then he offered to buy Twitter for 9.7 billion, and Elon Musk called him a swindler. So there's no love lost between these two. But I don't think there's going to be a sale either way anytime soon.
No, it doesn't look like it. They're alpha males, aren't they? Beating the chest and saying, I'm the king of the jungle. Somewhere along the way, things tend to even out because, you know, companies have to make money, as I say, and they have to attract custom and so forth. The other thing I think that was important about today's developments was that I don't know that enough was said about sustainability. We know that training AI models like ChatGPT requires energy levels equivalent to 3 nuclear power plants, according to one study. Some projections now are suggesting that by next year, global AI applications could require as much electricity as a country like Austria. And that's huge. So the future of AI and AGI can't be powered by renewables alone, at least not as we currently know them. We've been developing renewables for decades, starting with solar panels and wind turbines way back when I was at university in the 70s, and we haven't really come that far since then. So even EU leaders now recognise that France's nuclear plants might need to take up the slack when it comes to powering AI in Europe.
Wow.
We'll see developments with batteries, yes, and chips and things like that. But we're not really able to upscale those sorts of things yet to meet the needs of tech consumers in countries as big as China and India. That's a very big ask. So I think eventually we're going to have to really deal with that sustainability issue in more ways than we've done in talkfests.
Well, at least that'll give us a bit of breathing space for him, hopefully, to put some checks and balances in place. Mal, it's always a joy. Thank you so much for joining me. Mal Fletcher, there, a futurist and a social commentator.